Welcome back to the channel, everyone. So it's been a big week for Target stores. They're currently doing their resets, their summer reset anyways. So a lot of stores have actually finished. Mine was kind of like midway or, halfway done with it. So you're going to see a lot of figures on clearance, a lot of things on sale, moved around on the end caps and things like that. But that means new toys are dropping in. So I managed to find the Y-Wing and the N1 Starfighter. I actually had to reach out to an employee. He found these in the back for me. And we're going to unbox both of these in this video. Alright, let's kick this off with Gold Leader's Y-Wing, flown by John Vander, which I didn't know that. I didn't know his name prior to this, so that's awesome for the Micro Galaxy team for digging up research and putting a name to this war hero. But he can be seen flying in A New Hope as well as Rogue One, and I think they recycled some footage from A New Hope into Rogue One. This is our first Starfighter vehicle in Series 4. It is accompanied by a TIE bomber, the N1. I believe this is Biggs as a chase vehicle, and then Wedge Antilles as the other chase vehicle. I know Wedge is 1 out of 15,000, and I'm not sure if that is Biggs. I'm not sure if that is 1 out of 5,000 or 1 out of 15,000. Nobody has really found one yet. Our traditional look will show us everything that this Y-Wing can do. Engines can be placed on, the astromech goes in its designated area, we have some torpedoes which are removable, and we have some landing gear. And of course, I got to give you a nice close-up of what it looks like in the packaging. This is definitely the heaviest weathered vehicle that we have in Micro Galaxy Squadron. And our two figures, our hero, John Vander, and R2 BHD, which is always nice to get another astromech. Per usual, here is the barcode to help you track this down. I found this in North Texas. It is hitting Target stores first, but that doesn't mean it's not going to hit other retailers also. Alright, cool. Here it is out of the packaging. Looks great so far. Lots of little paint applications throughout. Sculpting looks tremendous as always. The figures look great as well. They've updated the paint quality on both of them. There is some weathering throughout this entire body. It's not as heavy on the sides and on the front as it is on the top, middle, and the bottom. They even did like a little afterburn effect, on the back end of that exhaust right there. The painting to that also looks great because, it gives the appearance that it is flying. Here's a better look at that weathering and just the overall sculpting to this. So if this bothers you and you think it's too heavy, you can use like an acetone and that'll clean it up a little bit. The same thing goes for the bottom. It's still so crazy to me how much they can sculpt within this small of a scale. Here's a nice close-up of our two figures, John and R2 BHD. His paint apps look good. There's no real bleed to them. One of the things that I wanted to point out is going to be on the side of the helmet right here. So if you look closely, they were able to put a lot of details on that, and they've improved that drastically since Series 1. Like, I really noticed it when I unboxed the AT-AT. Both Luke and the pilots had amazing little details on their helmets. For example, this is Series 1 Luke. Alright, now look at Series 4. Look at the difference between those. I mean, it's the same figure, but the paint applications are just so much more precise. And I love that because it shows that they're progressing in the line and they're not backtracking at all. Like, if we started with this and then ended up getting this, I would be extremely worried. But instead, every company or every new brand has to start somewhere, so they started off with this, and they probably figured out, wow, we have this technology now, we have this budget now, so we can make these paint applications even better. Even to the droids, I mean, look at the top of BHD, you can see there's individual lines there, whereas R2 didn't have any of those. Since we're done with the figures, let's just place them inside, so BHD will sit on that little peg, like the rest of the figures have in these Starfighter classes, so push him on in, so he won't fall out. He's pretty snug in there, but when you want to have him come out, there's an ejector button right there. You just push this up, and then he should just pop right right on out, just like that. Now for John and the Y-Wing, this cockpit will open off to the side instead of traditionally in the front. So you can see there is a little lip right there. You're just gonna pop this on open, and there you have it. So like the rest of the vehicles, I mean, this is no stranger to the amazing sculpting that they do to these cockpits, and that just makes me so happy. If this was just like bare and flat, like if this had like nothing going on and like nothing going off to the sides, I mean, this would be very lackluster. But the fact that they do include these and they go that extra mile to include all those little wires and components and stuff, I don't know, it makes it all for me. He's in, ready to save the day. You just close this back on up and we are ready to fly. We have 3 cannons or turrets at the front, so we have 2 at the nose and then 1 on top of the cockpit, which is also on it's a screw. So that will give us like a swivel look to it. It can't move all the way around, but it can just go from left to right. Underneath the nose, we have 2 torpedoes, ion or proton, whatever you want to call them. And they're actually removable. It's pretty easy to take these off. I mean, they're only being held by that little clip. So you just dig your nail underneath there, And there you have it. I mean, that's cool. I didn't expect that at all. I mean, that's such a cool, like, odd feature to put on this, but I'm really happy that they did it. Of course, I'll give you a closer look at those. I try to get them to stand upright, but it just wasn't working for me. Just too small. To place them back in, I mean, they just pop right on in. You shouldn't really have any issues with those. And it's cool that they even put that, like, burned look there, too. Like, you've been firing off a bunch of these torpedoes. That's an awesome touch. I'm glad they didn't skip that either. While I'm here at the bottom, you can notice that there is not a single screw, except for the one that is underneath this cockpit. But everything else has been, like, glued together, or the screws are already on the inside and they glued everything else on top of it. The last feature we have of this baby is, of course, the landing gear, which folds into the body, and it folds in flush, so nothing really sticks out. Here's how much height it gives us with the landing gear on. It is a considerable amount, and I mean, it's definitely noticeable. That's going to move us into some measurements. So, without the landing gear on, the height at the top of the turret, we're looking at about 1.25 inches. When it is open, it gives us a small bump, almost to 1.5 inches. The length brings us to 7.5, and the width to just under 4 inches. Last area on our list is going to be comparison. So the Y-Wing should be measuring around 75 feet, which is bigger than the X-Wing and Darth Vader's TIE Advanced, which I'm glad that they did that. I know all these ships are not really in scale with each other, but the smaller ones that can be, they're able to achieve that. Unfortunately, it is time for John to say goodbye because we have Mando's N1 Starfighter on deck ready for review. This right here I am so excited about. So this is also a part of Series 4. We saw its first appearance in the Book of Boba Fett, which was odd because, you know, we had Mando episodes in a show about Boba Fett. Anyways, that's a completely different topic. But this is a modified, beefed up to the max N1 Naboo Starfighter. When I say beefed up, this thing really is. It doesn't even need a hyperdrive ring. It has a third engine that doubles its output capacity. So essentially, this is like the Lamborghini or like a beefed up Supra in real life terms. The back of the packaging shows us a glimpse of what we can expect within Series 4 vehicles. Like I mentioned earlier, I believe that is Biggs, this is Wedge Antilles, we have our Y-Wing, and then our Bomber. Before we crack this open, I'd like you to get a good look of how beautiful this is in the packaging. I mean, that sheen, that like silver chrome look to it, I mean, it just looks fantastic. This is a piece that will display really well if you wanted to buy an extra and keep it in the packaging. It does come with one figure, and that is Mando in his Beskar. It would have been cool if they included R5, but, you know, we already have little Grogu in that bubble over there, so, you know, there's only space for one figure in there. Alright, so we have this beautiful piece out of the packaging. Now, when we first saw this, or when I first saw this, I couldn't believe my eyes seeing a beat down N1, and then they were going to rebuild it into this like hot rod, crazy starfighter. I mean, I thought that was the coolest thing. I mean, that was one thing that they did right, in my opinion, is they brought a lot of older elements, and gave us that, no pun intended, nostalgic factor, and it just worked out so well. And I don't know, it made me really giddy to be a Star Wars fan again. When you grow up and you watch all these films and you see some elements that were from the prequels that are being applied to, the later Star Wars episodes, I just think that is the coolest thing. And not to mention, like, when he's going through Beggar's Canyon and he, goes sideways through the canyon and he flies past that, loading ramp area, and it's still, beat down. It's still, nobody's repaired it after, 30 years or something like that. I don't know. It was just so cool. And so having this ship, I don't know, it means a little bit more to me. And I love this piece. So this entire ship has a chromium element to it with some minor remnants of that yellow Naboo on there. But overall, I mean, this is very sleek. It's straightforward. It looks amazing. And, when these ships were used on Naboo, they were like a form of royalty. Like, nobody else on Naboo could have ships like this because they were catered more to higher class. These engines look great. You can see there's some bare bones elements to it. Now with chromium, it has a higher resistance to turret fire, blaster fire, because of that finish. That's why it was used by royalty, because it could deflect a lot of that. One of the reasons why I consider this a hot rod, the way they built this, is this looks like a carburetor up here on the top. I mean, it's just a cool piece. I mean, it fits in pretty well with Star Wars. I mean, it gives it a really rugged, aggressive type of look. And I think after they blew up the Crest, they had to figure out, what kind of ship can we give Mando that's, sleek, but also can, have some aggressive elements to it. Let's see how this baby measures up. With the landing gear down, we are at 1.5 inches at the top of Grogu's bubble. For length, we are looking at just under 8 inches. And our width brings us just over 4 inches. With all these close-ups, I gotta give you one of Grogu. Look at him just sitting in there. That's so cool. Stoked they were able to sculpt and mold him into the ship. He's not removable, he just stays in there permanently. When it comes to Mando, this is our third appearance of him in Micro Galaxy Squadron. So it's gonna go as follows. Series 1, he came in the Crest. Series 2, he was on a speeder bike. And now, Series 4, he comes with the N1. They do mention in the packaging that this is Beskar Mando. However, his appearance looks the same from Series 1. Whereas our Series 2 looks like it's the more appropriate Mando that would fit in this N1. Here is how Mando looks to his back. You can see that his jetpack is removable, and it's secured by just a pin. The cockpit hatch is pretty traditional with the rest of our vehicles. It's on a hinge joint and it lifts up about that far. When you look on the inside, you can see all the gauges, which looks pretty identical to what we see within the show, and there's even those little handles to steer the ship from left to right. I tried to put him in there with his jetpack on, and it just doesn't work out. I mean, there's just too much that's kind of propping him up. When you remove his jetpack, he fits in there with ease. For fun, I don't know if you can tell the difference here, but I put the other Series 2 Mando in there with the darker type of cloth goods. When he's in the ship, you really can't tell the difference. Our last area is going to be on the underside with the landing gear, so there's not going to be a whole lot going on here because, the entire ship is very sleek. There's still some open elements here with like some turrets, but the landing gear does fold into the body. It stays relatively flush also. I did notice that there is more screws to this ship that are exposed than other vehicles. Now that could be because the glue might not hold really well with this finish. I don't know, I could just be speculating, but regardless, I don't really care for the screws too much. I feel like it does take away a little bit of the authenticity. However, if any ship were to have them, I feel like this Starfighter would be most acceptable since they are silver and it could kind of be hidden with the overall finish of the vehicle. When it comes to comparisons, this doesn't really go in scale with, say, our original trilogy stuff. So, like, the X-Wing, this is supposed to be, like, a little bit bigger than the Starfighter. This is supposed to be bringing in about 36 feet. And you can see it is definitely a lot bigger than this X-Wing. However, it is more in scale with our LAAT, so that is a plus because, since these are essentially from the same era. And here's a quick side-by-side of it next to the Crest, the before and then the after. But for me, it's, scaling isn't been a big issue. Like, I could really go with or without it. It doesn't really matter too much to me. Okay, everyone, that's going to wrap up this review and unboxing of Series 4 Micro Galaxy Squadron, the Y-Wing, and Mando's N1 Starfighter. These are hitting Target stores now. The price point is $14.99, which that is a new update. They used to be $16.99, but they made a price adjustment, lowering them down to $14.99. When it comes to the Y-Wing, it is a fantastic piece, beautifully detailed and sculpted. Some folks may think that the wash or the weathering on the top of the components might be a little too heavy, but you can use something like an acetone to clean it up a little bit. I do love that we're getting original trilogy vehicles as well as new characters and droids also. The torpedoes at the bottom of the Y-Wing is a nice touch, something that they really haven't done before, and I like that they're including new elements to these vehicles and not recycling the same thing over and over again. The paint applications to the figures have drastically improved since Series 1, so that is a massive plus. Overall, I think they did this ship justice, and I think you would appreciate having it in your collection. When it comes to Mando's Starfighter, a total showstopper. I love the finish throughout the entire ship. It definitely gives it that chromium vibe to it. This ship is beautifully sculpted. It is a very elegant piece, while still maintaining some grit. I gotta say, it's my favorite ship in the Starfighter class within Series 4. Aside from the sculpting and the finish to it, I love the little Grogu in the bubble. I think that was just such a beautiful touch. The Mando figure included seems to be the same version that we got in Series 1, rather than Series 2 blind box, which when you put them both in the ship, you really can't tell the difference. Seeing how well they sculpted Mando's Starfighter gets me really excited to get some Naboo N1s in the future. But that's it, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this double feature video with the Y-Wing and Mando's N1 Starfighter. Be sure to connect with me on Instagram to stay up to date when new things drop. I post very heavily on my stories when things go live. I also post toy photography and toy videos as well. As always, if you like this video and you want to see more of it, be sure to like and subscribe. It is free, and we will see y'all in the next video.